Here's something I get asked pretty regularly. We have both a product manager and a product owner, and we're not sure we need both. What's the difference and does it matter? It's a fair question, and the honest answer is it depends, but probably not in the way that you'd expect. A lot of organizations end up with two people, two titles, one product, and more confusion than they had before they introduced either role. And it's not because the people are wrong, but because the setup creates ambiguity around who actually owns the decisions. I'm Yuval. Welcome to another episode of Scaling with Agility. So let's think through when one role is enough, when splitting makes sense, and what goes wrong when you split it without being clear what you're actually splitting. Here's the pattern that I see most often. A company has a product manager. They own the roadmap, they talk to customers, they think about the market. That's working reasonably well. Then Scrum or Agile gets introduced, and with it comes this role called the product owner. And it starts to sound like it might need to be a different person. Someone closer to the team or focused on the day-to-day, writing stories, grooming the backlog, answering the team's question. The product manager doesn't feel comfortable doing all of these things. They want to stay focused on outbound. So the company splits the role. The product manager goes outbound. The company finds somebody, typically from the engineering organization, or just hires for the role that goes inbound. Two people, two titles, but with one product. And then the question starts to emerge. Who actually decides what the team should work on next? What if there is a conflict between the longer term roadmap direction and what's being asked of the team day to day? Who sorts that out? When a stakeholder wants something added, who do they call? Often the answer is whoever they can reach, whoever they feel comfortable talking to. And what that typically means is that engineering and conversations between different product teams often go to the product owner. And requests from the market, from customers go through the product manager, which creates two paths into the team. This approach, where the product direction starts getting driven by two people, can work if these people are really in tune, are aligned on the goal, on the strategy for the product. But it's often starting as a misunderstanding. But more often than not, this creates more confusion than clarity. There's a misunderstanding that's at the root of a lot of this, and I want to call it out. When we say product ownership, the accountability that Scrum describes, that doesn't mean doing all of the work that I talked about earlier. It doesn't mean doing all of the inbound or team-facing work yourself. It doesn't mean writing every story or being available to the team day in and day out. It just means being accountable for the value that the team creates, owning the outcome. Hey, owning is even in the name, yet we see a lot of product owners that don't really own anything other than the backlog of stories. That's not what product ownership is about. If you have a capable team, they can handle a lot of the breakdown work, the day-to-day themselves. They can figure out how to slice a feature, to write acceptance criteria, to think through sequencing and dependencies. That's what a good product team does. The product person's job is to make sure the team is building the right thing and the direction is clear, not to do the team's job for them. So a lot of the resistance product managers have to taking on product ownership roles, the worry that it means become a full-time backlog administrator, is based on a version of product ownership that isn't really what it needs to be. The accountability is real. The day-to-day workload doesn't have to. Here where this gets expensive. When you split the role and give somebody the product owner title, but not the real decision-making authority, where they're essentially relaying direction, playing a broken phone game from the product manager to the team, sometimes there's even the inability to talk to customers. The product owner is not allowed to talk to customers. You've created a proxy, someone who manages a queue rather than owns a product. And the teams pick up on this pretty quickly. They learn that the real decision happens somewhere else. So it starts to be a charade, a theater around the Scrum, practices and the product owner. And the real conversations start to happen through escalations to product managers. And that's not a reflection on the person in the role. It's a structural problem. The title implies ownership, but the setup that most organizations come up with doesn't support it. And in that gap, we start to see friction that shows up as escalations, misalignment in a team that doesn't have one source of truth. For one product, one team, there are really two setups that I've seen work well. The first is one person who genuinely owns the whole thing. The product manager was empowered to own the product, market, roadmap, the relationship with the team. They don't have to be in every stand-up or answer every technical question, but they're the person that the team looks to for direction. And they have the authority to make the direction stick. Most good product managers can do this well if the organization actually gives them the space to. The second is a genuine split, an honest one. If you have somebody focused on outbound and somebody focused on inbound, let's be clear that the outbound person owns the product direction and that the inbound person is supporting execution, helping the team move quickly, keeping things clear at the team level. It's a valuable role. Just don't give it a title that indicates ownership, not ownership of the product. It implies something that the role doesn't have. It creates, a dissonance. A simple way to test where you are is to ask yourself, can the person who's supposed to own your product say no to a feature request without needing to escalate? If not, it's worth looking at what's getting in the way. One product, one team is in some ways the simplest version of this question, and it usually is manageable. Once you're honest about where the accountability actually lives and where the structure is set up to support. In the next episode, we'll talk about a scenario where we have multiple teams, but let's first fix the one team structure. If you're working on figuring out product topology in your organization, I'm happy to have a conversation to hear how you're thinking through it and see if I can help you get some clarity. Hope this was useful and thank you for tuning in. Hope this was useful. Yuval out. I'm Yuval. Thank you for tuning to Scaling with Agility. Hope to see you here again soon.